My name's Maria, I'm in my 20s, and I was married to Ruben, a well-known businessman in the agricultural industry. We lived in an opulent home in one of the city's most picturesque neighborhoods. Ruben, my ex-husband, is a strong man who made a fortune selling corn in bulk each month. With this business, he created a true empire, and life with him seemed to be the dream of many women: stability, luxury, and high social status. Our story started unexpectedly. I was employed as a sales representative. My job at the machinery company was to simply display the machines at trade shows and industry events. To be honest, I was hired more for my looks than my abilities, because companies like this frequently hire attractive women with dramatic figures because they know it attracts the attention of powerful businessmen. I met Ruben at one of these trade shows when he noticed me standing next to a huge machine, grinning and attempting to draw in customers. It didn't take him long to approach me with the haughty demeanor of a powerful person. My life had been difficult before that. I had grown up in humble circumstances, struggling financially, and only after I started working did things start to improve. I knew that man wanted me in that moment, and to be honest, I saw an opportunity. I wasn't the only one taking advantage of opportunities like this. Many of my friends who worked with me did the same. We knew that in this kind of job, attracting the attention of influential men could open doors, and I wasn't going to waste the chance. When Ruben approached me at that trade show, he complimented my appearance and made it clear that I was getting more attention than the machine behind me. It was obvious that he wanted to win me over, but to my surprise, he didn't stop with words. He ended up purchasing one of the machines I was selling, which greatly increased my commission. At that moment, I realized how powerful and influential he was, so I saw an opportunity and turned on the charm to make him feel like he had control. He talked for hours about his land, crops, animals, and his travels around the world. I knew I was about to enter the life I had always dreamed of, and after a while, he asked for my number before departing. Shortly after, he sent me a message praising my appearance and asking if I was single. I immediately replied that I was, and we began exchanging messages every day. The conversation flowed naturally, and soon after that, Ruben asked me out. Naturally, I agreed without hesitation because he was the kind of man who could give me the life I had always desired. After our first date, we became closer, and soon after, we were dating. But to be honest, my objective was never to date. I had a plan to marry Ruben, wait for the right time, and obtain a sizable portion of his assets. Within a year of our relationship, I already had a car registered in my name, money in the bank, and everything I could possibly want. He supported me, and I took advantage of every circumstance until he finally proposed to me, and our wedding was like a dream come true, complete with gorgeous food, an opulent gown, and imported drinks. Despite the fact that the prince wasn't perfect, everything went perfectly without a hitch. Ruben had no close family because he was the only child and an orphan after his parents died, and the rest of his relatives lived abroad, so I would be the only one close to him to inherit anything in the end. I played my card well, and he fell right into my trap After getting married, my life became a carefully staged performance. I went with Ruben to all the important events, including business dinners and trips, and we seemed to be the ideal couple. He seemed to live the dream, showing me off everywhere we went like a trophy. Meanwhile, I patiently waited for the chance to inherit the entire empire of farms and corn, of which he was so proud. However, as time passed and our relationship started to fall apart, Ruben quickly revealed his true self, and Ruben thought he could trick me without me noticing his antics, and it disgusted me. I wasn't with him for love, it was just for my own gain, but I hadn't betrayed Ruben yet, and for me, loyalty was a matter of honor even in a phony marriage like ours. That's why I chose to exact revenge, and he was wrong. It was at this point that my ex-boyfriend Brenner returned to my life. Brenner was the only man I had ever truly loved, and our relationship was passionate and intense. Helped me get through a really tough period, and we truly loved each other, but the romance ended because of my immaturity and excessive jealousy. One day, while looking through social media, I saw that Briano had liked one of my photos. This sparked something inside of me, so I decided to start a conversation without any nostalgia. To my surprise, he responded almost immediately, and we began talking as if no time had passed. The conversations rekindled something inside of me that I had assumed had lain dormant, so I quickly set up a meeting with him. I got ready carefully, put on my best dress, and applied flawless makeup. I looked stunning. I took one of Ruben's cars and drove to the meeting. When I got there, I saw Breno waiting for me from a distance. For a brief moment, it felt like I was traveling back in time. He got up and gave me a tight embrace, remarking on how much I had changed into a sophisticated and important woman. I felt a little embarrassed, but that love between us was. I had always been honest with Breno, and this time was no different. I told him that my marriage to Rubens was a facade and that I was only with him for my own benefit. I also explained my plan to inherit a portion of everything when the time was right. Immediately, we sat down and began talking about life and what had happened during the time we had been apart. The conversation flowed so naturally that it seemed like we had never been separated. Discussed Ruben's affairs and how he treated me disrespectfully despite providing me with a luxurious lifestyle. After listening intently, he finally said, "Maria, be careful. Ruben isn't a fool. He's probably dealt with several women who approached him for his money. I'm sure he knows you're only with him for that reason." Those words stuck in my head because I had never considered it that way. Could Ruben be testing me? Did he know more than I thought? What was certain was that our relationship was failing even though we had only been married for a short time. Was already cheating on me without feeling guilty, so I told Breno that I would be smarter from that point on and that I would at least try to get a good divorce settlement. I explained that Ruben and I had made a deal that included financial benefits in the event of separation, and the irony was that he had come up with this clause as if he had already foreseen the end. After we finished eating, I bid Breno farewell with a tight hug and a kiss on the cheek because, after all, he was the only man I truly loved on. I thought about how our lives might have turned out differently if I had made different decisions on the way home, but I quickly snapped out of it after remembering what was at stake. I took a deep breath and drove until I arrived home, where I found Ruben on the couch intoxicated, smelling of cheap perfume, with lipstick stains on his neck and shirt. Anger rose inside me like an uncontrollable fire, leaving me to wonder why I was still there. I climbed the stairs, shaking with rage, went to the bedroom, and reached for my phone without giving it much thought. And called Breno. When he answered, I wasn't able to say anything at first, so I just took a deep breath. The person on the other end of the line listened to my rapid breathing and remained silent until I finally plucked up the courage to say, "I love you, Breno, I've always loved you." There was a pause, but then the response I had been waiting for arrived, "I've always loved you too, Maria." Those words brought me relief, but they also sparked something new inside me, so I decided he should. Totally helpless, I gave him the address and we decided to meet a few meters from the house, far from any cameras or eyes. When Breno arrived, I jumped in the car and immediately gave him a passionate kiss, which caused me to lose control. The car rocked as we moved, and anyone nearby could tell that something was going on inside. The adrenaline of the moment made everything even more exciting, and after we were satisfied, we allowed ourselves to be consumed by desire. I asked Breno what we would do from then on, what would happen to us now, and how are we going to be together with Rubens in the middle. I asked, unsure of how to handle the whole situation, and Breno gave me a mischievous smile before suggesting something that at first glance seemed to be the answer. We lowered the seat and lay there staring into nothing while still breathing heavily. We enjoyed the moment together as if time had stopped, but slowly reality set in. Absurd, let's take everything from him. The idea was alluring, but how could we take everything? He had cars, farms, harvests, and other valuables that we couldn't just take and flee with. I wondered how we would do it, and then I asked Breno if he had a safe. At that moment, an idea came to me. Ruben did have a safe at home where he kept important documents and occasionally even money, and it was big enough to hold valuables. I told Breno everything I knew. I hesitated not because I was afraid of Ruben, but because I knew it wouldn't be that easy. The safe size, everything except the code, and I didn't know it, but I knew that if we played it right, that detail could be overcome. Breno was impatient, his eyes glimmering with excitement, and he gripped my shoulders tightly, conveying the urgency he felt. "Maria, we can't miss this opportunity now," he whispered, his voice low but full of determination. I took a deep breath to try to organize my thoughts. Ruben was passed out on the couch, and I knew he wouldn't wake up anytime soon, especially in that state. Deep down, I also knew there wouldn't be another opportunity like this in the end. When things go wrong, my voice was almost a murmur, but it carried all the worry I felt. Breno looked directly into my eyes as if trying to instill the confidence I lacked. Trust me, Maria. This is the moment. After this, it might be too late, and if everything goes well, we'll disappear with whatever we get and never have to return. I gave in and said, okay, let's do this. Breno started the car and drove up to my house. He used the remote to open the gate, as he usually did. We got out in silence and went in through the back door without making any noise. I whispered to Breno, wait here, I'm going to check if he's still asleep. I walked slowly, carefully planning each step to avoid making any noise, and when I approached the living room, Ruben's snores confirmed that he was still unconscious, so I hurried back. I motioned for him to follow me, and once he was inside, we went straight to the bedroom. As I locked the door, my heart seemed to reverberate throughout the room. Breno quickly looked around, assessing the area, and then he came up to me and asked in a low voice, where's the safe? I pointed to him the hiding place behind a stack of clothes at the back of the closet, which was camouflaged by Blazer's Ruben, who hardly ever wore it. I pointed carefully so as not to make any noise, and he moved. Is this the safe? He asked, pushing the clothes aside to reveal the grey metal safe. It was sturdy and had a cold surface that seemed to chill the air around it, sending a shiver down my spine. He ran his hand over the digital panel, examining every detail as if handling something delicate. It must be a 4-digit code, he murmured to himself, looking at the small numeric pad that glowed faintly. There weren't many clues, just the cold metal and the tension in the air. We don't have much time, so we can't afford many more mistakes, so I whispered nervously, looking at the bedroom door. Ruben's snores were still audible from the living room, but any louder noise could wake him, and I knew that if that happened, we wouldn't have time to explain Breno. He tried a few more numbers, but nothing happened. The panel flashed red, indicating an error. Brenner looked at me for a moment, a mixture of surprise and approval in his eyes, and then he slowly punched in the numbers. After the last digit was entered, time seemed to stop, and I held my breath waiting for the answer. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, and his eyes were fixed on the safe. The risk was enormous, and if Ruben woke up and discovered us red-handed searching through his belongings, it would be over. My heart was racing. Safe's reaction, but a gentle click broke the stillness, the panel blinked a gentle blue, and finally the sound of the lock disengaging confirmed what we needed. I released the breath I had been holding, relieved, though my heart was still pounding. Brenner gave me a cheeky smile, and it worked. He asked, almost incredulously, "Are you ready to see what's inside?" I told him to stop playing around and open the safe because the tension was killing me, and every second seemed to drag on while Ruben kept snoring downstairs. When we looked inside the safe, our jaws nearly dropped. There was a pile of papers, documents, and some foreign currency notes that would have been worth enough on their own, but what caught her attention most was a small black bag that was discreetly tied up. With wide eyes, he shook it slightly and whispered in shock that they were diamonds. The sound of the metal unlocking the safe was gentle, but inside me it felt like a door opening to an uncertain future. I didn't say anything, just took the small bag from his hands and swiftly untied the knot while my heart was racing in my chest. When I finally opened the small pouch, the sparkle of the diamonds left me stunned. There were several brilliant, perfect stones that I didn't need to be an expert to know were real. Ruben had been keeping this from me the entire time, and now everything made sense as to why he had always avoided discussing or opening it. "That safe in front of me, they're real," I whispered, still in shock, almost unable to believe it. He had never mentioned these stones, and I could sense that they were the most valuable possession he had kept hidden. Breno, who was still a little pale, looked at the stones with a mixture of fascination and urgency as he approached, whispering firmly, "We need to leave now, we can't stay any longer. If he wakes up and finds us with this, we're done for. Let's grab what we can and disappear." I knew he was right, so I ran to I told Breno to wait in the bedroom while I went downstairs to check on Ruben's on the couch. I went down quietly, heart pounding, fearing that any noise would wake him. I had no idea how long we'd be gone, but I couldn't leave anything important behind. As I looked again at the open safe and the papers inside, all I could think about were the diamonds, which now represented our way out, the key to escaping everything and securing a better future. I hurried back upstairs and signaled to Breno, who followed me silently. We left the house as discreetly as possible, and the feeling of freedom as we crossed the door was indescribable. We got into the car, and as we drove away, the weight of tension began to lift soon. I approached him and saw that he was still sleeping deeply, the strong smell of alcohol filling the air, and he was completely unconscious, sprawled carelessly on the couch with no idea what was happening. It seemed as though the world had stopped for a few seconds as we drove through the empty streets in the early morning, filled with laughter and euphoria. We exchanged adrenaline-filled looks with each other, and the celebration began right there in the car. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time, as if this escape had opened the door to a new life where I was finally in control. The plan had worked, which only increased our excitement, and Breno, equally overwhelmed by the success of our escape, kissed me. He asked me to stay in the car every few minutes when we stopped, saying he would get some clothes and paperwork so we could disappear for a while. I stayed in the car, watching the street, still a little tense, but excited, and he didn't take long to return with a small backpack and get back in the car, ready to continue our getaway. We drove on without a specific destination, but with the obvious goal of getting as far away as possible, so we chose to stop in a small town where no one would. We reached our destination quickly, and during the drive, I did something I knew was necessary. I threw away my phone and anything else that could be used to track us. However, before I did so, I moved all of the money from my account to my mother's, a secure location where I could access it without raising any red flags. When I was finished, it felt like I had severed all ties with my former life. Breno smiled at me, realizing the seriousness of the decision, and said, "Now it's just us." It was odd to consider how much had changed in such a short period of time, from a life of superficial luxury and an unhappy marriage with Ruben to a new reality full of risk and adrenaline. At the same time, I felt a lightness in my chest and a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. Breno was by my side, and that made all the difference. I never imagined that after all this time, our paths would cross in such an intense way. I regret nothing. We were running with precious stones in our pockets, some money hidden away, and a shared dream. With the diamonds in hand, the prospect of a better future seemed more real than ever. We have a plan, a path to follow, and for the first time, I feel like I'm truly in control of my life. I hope everything goes well, that we can find a place where no one knows us, where we can start over, and more than ever, I feel like I've finally achieved my goal. Of course, fear was still present because we knew we were on the run and that what we had done could have serious repercussions. Freedom with my true love is what I've always desired.